It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. This show is brought to you by Audible.com. You go to audibletrial.com/Opperman Report. You go there for free. You sign up for free. Get yourself a free audiobook. Tonight, we are live. Let's see. Find a list of stations. We are live tonight on TalkSuperstation.com. Public Streaming Network Radio, awakeradio.us, awakeradio.uk, awakeradio.australia, wolfspiritradio.com, 1800onlinenetwork.com, Shizaz Radio, Just Us Radio Network, Scottish Sovereigns on the Land, MyRadiostream.com, the Opperman Report, on TuneIn.com. We're also on Stitcher.com. Then after the show, we go live up on, well, not live, but we go up on YouTube, Opperman Report YouTube channel. We go up on iHeartRadio. And we go up on the Spreaker channel. Well, in fact, right now we're live on Spreaker. You can get us there on Spreaker right now. So, tonight, without further ado, we got a really, really big show. Got a really, really, really big guest. We got a really, really big problem, okay, because our guest tonight, St. John Hunt, who is the son of E. Howard Hunt, the CIA agent, Watergate burglar, and confessed JFK assassination. But the only problem is that the phone number that St. John Hunt gave me is not the correct phone number. So I just called it up, and I got some woman. I don't think she knows who St. John Hunt is or is aware of the interview this evening. So I did get in touch with St. John Hunt this afternoon. He sent me his phone number. It appears to be the wrong number. Hopefully, I sent him an email to, straighten that out. And hopefully, man, he'll get that email in the next couple of seconds. And he'll see that we have the wrong phone number, and he'll give me a call. Otherwise, it's going to be 3 long hours, guys. Okay? Because while I thought I was going to have some trouble getting hold of the guest today because it was like last minute. He's in the middle of a move. I thought we had it all straightened out this afternoon when he sent me that phone number. But darn, turns out it is the wrong number. I got a lot of big announcements this week. Okay, and I was going to save them for the after show this evening after we had on this great big guest, St. John Hunt, who's the son of E. Howard Hunt. I was so excited about this show, so I even called my dad up and I told him, "Hey, Dad, you're not going to believe what I have on. The son of E. Howard Hunt. We're going to be talking about the Watergate break-in and the Bay of Pigs and the JFK assassination, all this kind of stuff." And he was all excited, too. So hopefully we can get this straightened out before we waste too much time here. Because, like I said, this is a really big show. This week, I did an interview with Hank Harrison, who is the father of Courtney Love. I did this on Wednesday afternoon. And I was excited about this to begin with because the movie just came out, Soaked in Bleach. And a couple of weeks ago, John Potash, the author of Drugs Used as a Weapons Against Us, when John was working on that book, he was a guest on my show talking about his book about how the FBI's war on Tupac Shakur, which is an excellent book that brings out all this information about Tupac Shakur and how engrossed he was, and he was with the Black Panthers. He was totally involved with the Black Panthers, way more than I had ever realized. And we got the correct number from St. John Hunt. Good man. Good man. But anyway, I'll be talking about the whole thing. As soon as I get a hold of St. John Hunt here, what do you call it? I'll be giving the announcement about this Hank Harrison interview that we did. It's in the member section on OppermanReport.com. Okay? And he brought out some information that is so startling that I'm going to be doing a press release about this. I'm going to be putting out a press release this weekend as soon as I have some time. and some money, it's not free to put out a press release, And I'm going to be putting that out this weekend because he talks about how Courtney Love was actually dating a CIA agent that was a friend of his when she was a kid. And then I brought up to him about all the stuff about Jeffrey Epstein and how Courtney Love was found on Jeffrey Epstein's plane. And he said, oh, yeah, Courtney was involved in all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to be talking about that right after we have our guest, St. John Hunt. Unless I have the wrong number.
Hello, this is St. John.
Okay, I didn't get the wrong number twice. Okay, thank you, St. John. All right.
Yeah, I'm the one that should be apologizing. I am so totally sorry. I just got this new Florida area code number transferring from my California line that I've had for so many years, and my dyslexia just flips those numbers around still.
I had a feeling that was going to be it. I was going to try the other one. Okay, so we're live on the air. I've been killing time since until we got you here. Just a couple of things real quick. We have breaks every half hour. They're about 4 minutes breaks. If we talk over the breaks, the audience can hear us talking, so we don't want to say private stuff over the breaks.
Okay.
Okay. No new assassinations or murders. You don't want to reveal during the breaks there. And also, no obscenities because we want to keep this in the the public, not in the adult context section.
Right. Gotcha.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me so much.
No, really, I'm really excited about this. I even called up my dad to tell him, "Hey, Dad, I have the son of one of the Watergate burglars, the C.I.A. agent." I was so excited. We're about the same age, you and me, right? I'm 53 years old.
61.
Get out of here. Okay, well, you look good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so now let's start this off. Tell us, because I listened to a lot of interviews about you today, and I still don't know anything about you. So I want to know, who is St. John Hunt? What do you do for a living? Are you married? Do you have kids? Tell me about yourself.
Well, I'm married to a wonderful gal I met in community college in 2007 up in Eureka, California. Her name is Mona Arnold, and we've been happily married ever since. I had two children, Rachel, who's 25 now, and my son Travis, who's just turned 17. They live in California with their mom, where Rachel doesn't. She's got a place of her own. But I work as a writer for Roger Stone right now. And prior to that, for many years, I worked as a healthcare provider for in-home support services. I took care of a gentleman for 9 years who was a quadriplegic and had a lot of trying times with that type of work. Then when I moved to Florida here 2 years ago, I was a car hop for a valet company.
Very interesting. Okay, that's a real cross span there.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you a question. Now we met through Chris Milligan from Trine Day Press. Put me in touch with you. Now I had Chris on the show, right, and his dad was CIA as well. And I said to him, I said, "Hey, Chris, what do you think? Is there any hope for our government? Is there any hope?" And he kind of had this attitude, "Oh yeah, we can still vote the rascals out." So now, what are your politics? Like, do you still think there's any hope?
It's embarrassing to say, but there's a huge part of me that really doesn't think there's any hope for a complete changeover from the years of insider trading, so to speak, of the financial and political elite that have continued to dominate our political spectrum. But there's a tiny part of me still that has enough heart and enough hope and enough faith that, given the right circumstances with the right people, we could make changes and bring true democracy back to the United States. However, it may not be capable without some fighting in the streets. Now, I grew up in the '60s, so you have to understand that I saw how valuable in many senses the demonstrating in the streets and the clashes with police and that type of thing really helped the movement along to extricate us from the war in Vietnam. I mean, I can't say that it was the sole cause of the end of Vietnam. But I think any serious change down throughout all of history has been shown to be be served by not just a nonviolent demonstratable aspect in the streets, but also when you put some sticks and stones to it too. I just think it may have to come to that.
I like to refer to it as resistance. We have to resist the oppression that we're under. And I know what you're saying. I have that same kind of thing, that gullible hope, I guess you might call it.
Yeah.
But I can't say, hey, my dad killed the president. You know what I mean? For you, it has to be more of a leap of faith. Okay, so how'd you grow up now? How'd you grow up living with E. Howard Hunt?
Well, didn't really know him that well until my older teens. Of course, he was missing from our family structure for most of my childhood, including my early teens, and was told that he was an employee of the United States State Department, Foreign Services, and that's the reason why we traveled so much. But it wasn't until I was 16 that they sat me down, my father and my mother, and told me the truth, or what they would allow to be the nearest to the truth about what my father did. Nobody ever said to me what my mother was actually involved in, which was much of the same kind of stuff. She was a early OSS, and before that, she was working for Averell Harriman and that whole thing in the rebuilding of Europe and the tracking of Nazi currency and money, objects of art, gold and such from the coffers of the Jews and various families in Europe. She spent a few years tracking that stuff down. But it was 16 years old, and they said, well, your dad isn't Papa isn't State Department, he's actually CIA. Of course, I'd never heard of the CIA before, and as a 16-year-old, I really didn't have much interest in what it was he did, because by that time, our lives had been so uprooted so many times that at that point it doesn't even matter, what they told me. It just seemed like there was a huge gap between the children and the parents,
Gotcha. I gotcha. But now, what kind of countries were you traveling to?
Well, born in D.C., and before I was 6 months old, we traveled to Tokyo, Japan, where we lived for 3.5 years. My first basic crude language was Japanese, and then we moved to Montevideo, Uruguay, for 4 years. I went to the French school down there, so I had to learn to speak some French to attend the school, but was surrounded by people that spoke Spanish, and I only spoke a bare minimum of Japanese. So it got pretty confusing most of the time. Then we moved to Mexico City, and then to the States, and then back to Mexico, and then after the Bay of Pigs to Spain, to Madrid, Spain for a couple of years, and then finally back to the United States, where we stayed. That was like late 66, 67.
So, okay, and then they tell you that your dad's working for the CIA, and you didn't ask, well, what do you do for the CIA? You must have known about James Bond and stuff like that.
Well, certainly I knew about James Bond, but I didn't equate, I wouldn't have been able to tell you at that age that James Bond worked for MI5, and that MI5 was the British equivalent of CIA. My dad didn't present it that he was a spy in any sense. He said it was just another governmental agency that required a lot of traveling. It was part of the diplomatic services. So there was still quite a bit of subterfuge involved in what they actually were telling me. It wasn't until much later that, of course, a few years later, that I realized and started, looking in for myself what the CIA was all about.
Okay, well, then give us that story. What'd you catch on to?
Well, I caught on to the CIA was was a government, an arm of the government. It was policy. It was not supposed to be a policy-making arm, but as it turned out, had a great deal of influence on policy making. One of the earliest accusations about CIA I ever heard, the first accusation against them, was that my dad, as part of the CIA, was involved in the killing of President John F. Kennedy. And this brought, I mean, I was looking at a poster tacked onto a telephone pole and saw this flyer for a lecture at San Francisco State University by Dick Gregory, and they showed pictures of some persons on this poster, and one of them was a picture of my dad, and it had the big fat black, writing on top of it was CIA killed JFK, and so that was my first introduction to any nefarious allegations levied against the CIA.
That was actually my first realization as well, because I met A.J. Weberman in New York City. Yeah. I met A.J. because I was one of the yippies in Washington Square Park, trying to protest for legalizing marijuana. And they pointed him out to me one day, and I said, yeah, he wrote that book. And I saw the Ipswich Times newspaper and had the pictures of the three tramps and stuff. Now, what did we actually – we have a lot in common. Now, what did we actually realize? I didn't see my dad on there, but now, what did you – what did we come to understand or know as fact? Was that your dad, one of those three tramps? Because now they're saying there's all different guys, and those aren't the three guys.
No, even though there's a tremendous resemblance, I have to, to realize one of several things. Number one, my dad was such a highly placed CIA operative that he would not have been in the position of going in disguise and, whatever the tramps were accused of doing. I don't know. He wouldn't have been one of those guys. He was higher up on the ladder than that. And as it turns out, and as you said just a few moments ago, there have been several people confessing to being the tramps. I think there's a total of 6 people for that 3-person job. So I don't know. That could be additional disinformation, but I have seen an interesting photograph of Dealy Plaza moments after the shooting, and there is a gentleman standing there with a trench coat and a hat, much like my father had. I could say they were exact replicas, and he looks very much like my dad, and he's just standing in the street. I don't know that gentleman's ever been identified, but I do know, and I do feel that my father was not only involved, but was actually there in Dealy Plaza at that time. And that can be substantiated in a number of ways. Number one, it's certainly his alibis over a very short period of time have crumbled, and one of his alibis being based on his children knowing that he was at home, it falls completely flat because I was at home and he was not at home. When he got deposed by Mark Lane during the Liberty Lobby trials, his alibis for his whereabouts that day, they crumbled, and he was not able to say unequivocally where he was that day. So, in addition, a good friend of mine, Tosh Plumley, was a pilot for CIA at the big Miami CIA station down here. Has come forward and said that he flew my father and a number of other officials from Florida to Dallas that day. So I think there's enough. I also remember my mother telling me that Papa was in Dallas on business.
Oh, really?
On that day.
Well, now, there's even a video I was watching today that claims that your mother is pictured next to those tramps as well.
Well, that's probably that video, the little short video clip put up by Paul Kangas, who's a very nice fellow, but he's overly enthusiastic, and he has a tendency to go on these tangents that aren't substantiated. And certainly, my mother was not in Dallas that day, and that picture is nothing like what my mother looked like at that time. So I remember also that when my father came back from Dallas, he endured a plastic surgery operation to have his ears pinned back.
Oh, really?
Which according to my parents, he had wanted to do for a number of years, but wow, he chose to come back from Dallas and engage in that almost immediately. So there may be some connection with that. That physical alteration that he went through, and the fear that he may have been photographed in Dealy Plaza that day.
Well, now, What would motivate your dad to file that defamation lawsuit? Because if he was there, like, why wouldn't he just want to keep this? Didn't he take a polygraph too? He took a polygraph and he passed it, right?
I believe he failed. Yeah.
Oh, he failed. Okay. But what would motivate him to file a lawsuit and open up a whole can of worms? Oh, really? Okay.
Money. I believe he felt that his name had been damaged, and so he filed a lawsuit. The original story came out in a small paper press, I think called was it Liberty Lobby or
Spotlight?
Spotlight, that's right. Saying that Victor Marchetti, I believe, was quoted as having either authored the article or co-authored it, and there was a part in there about how is the CIA going to explain. There was apparently a memo that had been uncovered. How is the CIA going to explain E. Howard Hunt's presence in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963? Well, I think my dad looked at that, and either on his own or with help and motivation from his attorney, decided to sue a libel suit in the hopes of making a great deal of money. Now, initially, he did win the suit. He was awarded over $600,000, but when they appealed and they got Mark Lane as their attorney, his whole basis just crumbled, and he lost. So, but I think initially I just have to say it was money. He spent a lot of money on his Watergate defense, and served 33 and a half months in federal penitentiary, and he'd been in out of 14 different jails during his time, and basically was a broken man looking to replenish some of the money that he had saved over the years, and then ended up spending on Watergate defense.
Well, after Watergate, after the whole thing, he got out of jail for Watergate. What did he do for a living after that?
After Watergate, he had a book he wrote during the tail end of that called Undercover, Autobiography of an American Spy, which didn't do so well because it was pulled from the shelves within 6 or 7 months of being released, due to the fact that they found some glaring untruths and blatant inaccuracies in the book relating to his testimony and at the Senate Watergate inquiries, and so his publisher decided that the book should be pulled off the shelves, and it was. He went about continue his writing, which he'd been able to pump out. I mean, by the time he died, he was 88 years old. He had 86 books published. Not bad for a hack. But he didn't really earn that much money on them. I think he relied on his C.I.A. pension and whatever money he could drag in from writing books, which he did have a steady book flow year after year. I got to hand that to him.
Yeah. No, I had no idea it was that many books. Now,
yeah, amazing. 86.
What was it like for you and the family? I guess the crap hit the fan with Watergate.
Yeah. Why
don't you give us, because that's a whole story in itself. Because I know everybody wants to talk about the deathbed confession and the deathbed testimony and all this kind of stuff like that. But Watergate in itself is such a historical event, and I didn't know anything about the whole thing with your mother being killed during Watergate. I don't think anybody knows that story.
Yeah, it's not a story that's well publicized. It was an event that was that came up initially in December of 1972, just after she crashed. There was some headlines about the Watergate pay mistress dies in a fiery plane crash in Chicago, but Watergate really just completely decimated my family. After my mother was killed and my father went to prison, we were split up as a family. My sister and I and my little brother were separated when William F. Buckley, who was my godfather, sent the two thugs to our home in Potomac and kidnapped my little baby brother David when he was 9, and sent him down to Florida to live with his godfather, who was a very notorious individual related to the Bay of Pigs and drug smuggling in the South Florida area, named Manuel Artime, best friend of my father's. And so David was kidnapped and placed with him. My sister and I were forcibly evicted from our home, and we never recovered as a family. I mean, we've never, all of us children, never have sat down and talked about Watergate or my mother's death or anything about my father. It's a bridge that's just not going to be crossed, I don't think. And especially since I came out with bond of secrecy, they will never ever talk to me ever. So I mean, as many times as I've tried to reach out and been turned down, that's something that I've had to live with. But Watergate really broke up our family in a huge way, and we never recovered from that.
Oh, okay, wait, hold on a second. We're talking to St. John Hunt, the son of E. Howard Hunt, who's the author of Bond of Secrecy, and the link to that is up on the Opperman Report blog. You can go there, a link right now, and pick up that book tonight from Amazon.com. But now you're saying that after your mother was murdered, that William F. Buckley, the guy that we all see on TV when we were kids watching on Sunday mornings, right?
Yeah.
That guy came to your house and kidnapped your brother and took your brother and sent your brother to live with a drug dealer?
Yes. As a matter of fact, that's about the simplest way to put it. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And Bill Buckley had been my godfather and my sister's godfather, but there was a whole plot that was engineered between Buckley and my father and the lawyers to get us to leave the house, and that was that the house had been sold in order to finance the money my father needed to pay the attorneys. That was all false. I didn't find out that was a lie until just a couple of years ago. But that's exactly what happened. He came down with a couple of his guys, and they literally grabbed my brother and threw him in the back of a car, screaming and crying, and that was just a horrifying experience.
Was Buckley CIA as well? Because there's been a lot of speculation that Buckley was CIA.
Yes, as a matter of fact, he was. He was recruited by my father. One of several notable people that my father recruited. Another fellow was the Oswald's handler. What was his name? Very interesting guy in the CIA. I'll find it in here. But yeah, in Mexico City, my father recruited William F. Buckley Jr. To be a CIA, and I think Buckley was for many, many years, although at that time that the Watergate happened, I don't believe he was anymore at that time.
Okay, but let's take a couple of steps back. There's one day your mom is still alive, and you're living with your brother and your sister, and how do you find out about the Watergate arrest? You're watching TV, you got a phone call at the house, lawyers start showing up. What happens that day?
Well, just prior to that, I had been, living at the house there, our house in Potomac, which my mother called Witch's Island, which is a cute name, and everyone else in the house, there was nobody else in the house. It was just me and my father. The rest of the family was on a vacation to England and Europe. And one night, one early morning hours, probably 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, my father burst into my room in a state of dire stress and pacing and ordering me to come up to the master bedroom and ask no questions, which I dutifully did as the good son. And
how old were you?
And I was 17.
Okay.
Turned 17 in March, April, May, June, so I was, 3 months into being 17. And, of course, my father was up there, and he was on the phone or waiting for phone calls. And he had 2 large suitcases on the beds in the room there, and he ordered me to go in the kitchen and get cleaning supplies, Playtex rubber gloves, and towels and things, and Windex, and to clean everything inside of the suitcases and then clean the suitcases themselves. So, I mean, something was definitely up. And then when that job had been done, we put them in the back of his Pontiac Firebird and drove them out to the Potomac locks, the canal locks, and where there was water, and we just chucked them in.
What was in the suitcases?
In the next few days, I helped him do a number of other things, illegal things, transferring a lot of money from banks in and around Georgetown and Washington, D.C., and getting rid of other pieces of evidence. And I mean, at that point, I knew that a crime had been committed, and that he was in deep trouble. So when his name started surfacing in the papers that the FBI had launched the biggest manhunt in their history thus far, looking for E. Howard Hunt, it was slightly amusing that he was hiding in our home in Potomac. But the press started coming around and camping out at the bottom of the driveway on River Road, and so that's how I knew what was going on, and my mother and the rest of the kids found out in the British papers and on the news in England that there had been an arrest made at a break-in of the Democratic National Committee headquarters. They recognized, my mother, of course, recognized the names of all the individuals. They had been in and around our house for many months. They were longtime friends of our family since the big days. And she came home and took over from the duties that I had been given, and eventually became the pay mistress of the Watergate situation, blackmailing Nixon in what I call the Hunt-Nixon wars.
Okay. We're here with St. John Hunt, the son of E. Howard Hunt, CIA agent, Watergate burglar, and confessed JFK assassin. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break now, about 4 minutes. We'll come back. We'll have more of E. Howard Hunt, the author of, what is it? The Bond, find my notes here.
Bond of Secrecy.
Bond of Secrecy. And there's a link to that right now on the Opperman Report blog. We'll be right back after these messages.
Thank you.
And now a word from our sponsors. We are listener-sponsored, and we appreciate your donations. If you like the show, please visit OppermanReport.com and click on the donate button. Or you can donate directly through PayPal at OppermanReport@gmail.com. We have Mike Gray of InfinityHomeplans.com. He's the host of Parlay over at CJ Mars Radio, Thursday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you need custom home designs, stock plans, or 3D work, he's your one-stop shop for home design and drafting needs. Mike Gray at InfinityHomeplans.com. At InfinityHomeplans.com. If you're looking for essential oils, stop by and check out Essentially Tammy on Facebook. She is Young Living Essential Oils Independent Distributor. Now, these are 100% therapeutic grade oils. They help support the body's natural functions. You can visit her website posted on Essentially Tammy to see the current deals, or email at JockoTammy, JOCATAMI @yahoo.com, or call 352-239-8546. 352-239-8546. Hey, if you need a private investigator, go to my website, emailrevealer.com. We offer asset searches, locates, skip tracing, adoption investigations, online infidelity investigations. We can recover deleted text messages from a cell phone or trace an email to online dating websites to catch people cheating. That's emailrevealer.com, or you can call 800-572-9762. 800-572-9762 for emailrevealer.com, my PI website. Pacific West Bamboo. It's your premier source for construction and craft-grade bamboo poles. They're announcing their latest project with EcoHead Event Sanitation, making bamboo composting bathrooms and porta-potties. Their first display will be at the Lucidity Festival in Santa Ynez, California, April 11th to the 13th. Come by and say hi and see what you can build with bamboo. Contact them for any kind of event planning, display building. If you need construction grade or craft grade bamboo products, call Amanda at 503-839-8126, 503-839-8126, or visit PacificWestBamboo.com, their brand new website. We're also sponsored by the New World Mexican Women. This is a rural Mexican craft women's cooperative. They are traditional makers of fine handcrafted, authentic jewelry. They use beautiful stone mosaics and Pacific blue Abilene inlay. They have a wonderful book of love letters written to their men in the United States, begging them to return to their families in Mexico. But they've written a new book, and it's it's about a young girl that falls in love with a rodeo bull rider and runs off with him without telling her family. It's a beautiful love story called Azuquina Part 1, Azuquina to the Rodeo. You can find their books and jewelry by clicking on their banner ad at OppermanReport.com or by Googling New World Mexican Women. You can also promote your business or website right here and have your ad played all over the world 7 days a week by emailing OppermanReport@gmail.com or calling 800-572-9762. Welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. We are here with St. John Hunt, the son of E. Howard Hunt, the CIA agent, Watergate burglar, and confessed JFK assassin. Now, back around this time, what do I call you, Saint? Is that what people call you? Your first name, Saint?
Yeah, they do. It's actually Howard is my first name, St. John's my middle name, but I've never used Howard as as anything other than on legal documents.
Gotcha. Okay, so now when you were a kid, 17 years old, and this is going on, what did your friends say? Like, what did your girlfriends say? What was it like?
Well, they just didn't really know, how to deal with it. They were very supportive of me and didn't make too big of a deal of it. I think they just were so, kind of weirded out about the whole thing that they just sort of let things happen and were there for me if I needed them. My girlfriend certainly and my friends, were very supportive and stood by me. I mean, I moved away from D.C. within the next couple of years to Wisconsin, and I took my girlfriend and my two best friends with me.
Oh, really? You moved out on your own?
Yeah, well, we were thrown out of our house by Buckley and his crew, and then after living in a little apartment in Georgetown with my sister Lisa for a while, I decided to move to the wilds of Wisconsin and just leave all the Watergate and everything behind.
And this story about Buckley, and this has never come out before, has it?
No, it hasn't. It's not that big of a deal, but it's interesting to note that Rolling Stone ran an article about the Watergate plane crash and the murder of Dorothy Hunt, which my sister and I responded to by writing a very stern letter to Rolling Stone, accusing them of yellow journalism and sensationalism without facts and this kind of thing. And they sent a reporter, a very nice lady by the name of Julia Cameron, who ended up living with Lisa and I at our home in Potomac for 2 weeks, basically writing this article, which she had published, which eventually was published in Rolling Stone, called Life Without Father by Julia Cameron. And she eventually married the great director Martin Scorsese for many years. But she was a fine person, and that was when we were at the very end of our ability to stay in our home, and we were packing, and it's just a really depressing time.
I could imagine. Now, What was the length of time between the time that your father got arrested and your mother was killed? What was that span?
I believe my father surrendered. Let's see, August. I think August of '72, and she was killed in December of '72. And a week after she was killed, he pled guilty on all charges and threw himself at the mercy of the court. So they weren't. E. Howard Hunt wasn't going to be a bother to them. And in many years later, when I sat with my father during the time that we were talking about Watergate and the JFK assassination, he, with tears in his eyes and gripping my hand very, very strongly, even though he was ill, he said that he was worried that the children were at risk at that time for their lives, and that being in prison, he had no way to protect us. And that was the first indication that I ever had that the death of my mother was more than just a fluke plane accident. But he had never said anything about it before then, and it just made the hair stand on my back, you know.
Well, when his youngest son was taken from the home and by William F. Buckley and put in the home with his drug smuggler, was that by his will or against his will?
That was by his will. Okay. Yeah, that was by his will. I mean, he didn't. I mean, of course, he had to know that our teammate was involved in massive drug smuggling. But you know, I think we had been friends with their family for many years, and you know, the Cuban, you know, the Cubans had a way of keeping their families sort of you know, pristine, away from the daily ins and outs of smuggling and that kind of thing. I mean, our teammate he was picked by Robert F. Kennedy to be the next president of a free Cuba. Had the Bay of Pigs invasion been successful and the assassination of Castro occurred successfully, our teammate would have you know, would have been placed in that position as the president of a new free Cuba.
No,
he was well thought of and well connected.
I'm Cuban, so I got you, man. You know, my family, my uncles were all always talked about the Bay of Pigs and all that time, and they all came from Cuba, and they all got these jobs with the unions and all kinds of stuff where they didn't have to work, and all interesting stuff going on with them. So I'm very familiar, with all that kind of culture, that kind of stuff for sure. Now what about? A lot of people think that Watergate was a setup, okay, and that the burglars were set up because there was a cop waiting outside, and he wasn't even on duty that night. He was a very high-ranking cop. I forget his name, but he was right there to pick him up. Are you familiar with that story?
Well, I'm familiar with the idea that Watergate was a setup. A lot of people, or a certain amount of people, certainly think that it was a CIA setup. But I in looking into it myself, I don't really know what the CIA, you know, could have had to gain other than a stronger hold over Nixon. Which, I mean, Nixon and the CIA under the head who was the director at that time was not John Foster Dulles, but or Alan Dulles. It was
Helms.
Yeah, Helms. Yeah, Dick Helms, a good friend of my father's, and it's confusing to me. I'm not really sure. You know, I think that I know for a fact that the Watergate operations, of which there were several break-ins successfully, I might add, it was an onion. There was layers where you would have my father's primary targets being different, probably than McCord's. Reason for being there. I think McCord worked as a double agent for the CIA as well as for the committee to re-elect the president. I believe my father, I know my father was a double agent working for the CIA and the White House because it was his whole retirement from the CIA in 1970 was a false retirement. It was, as a matter of fact, his second and possibly even his third false retirement from the CIA, in which he was given, CIA clearance up to a pretty high level to be able to interact and get supplies and things from the CIA tactical division, and report back solely to Dick Helms. My father, made these reports and delivered to Dick Helms. And that's come out in more recent times. So he wasn't actually retired from the CIA when he joined the Nixon White House, and people, I think, are under the false impression that the White House courted my father into joining, but in reality, my father courted Chuck Colson, who was a Brown alumni. My father graduated from Brown University, and so did Charles Colson, who was Nixon's special counsel. And he actually went out seeking Colson and the possibility of working for Nixon at the behest of Dick Helms, who wanted to know just what the hell was going on in Nixon's White House. Of course, Helms and Nixon didn't get along, and Hoover and Nixon didn't get along, and Nixon had been trying to get both the FBI and CIA to engage in domestic surveillance and bugging and planning of evidence and that sort of thing, and they refused him, and so he started this internal White House investigative unit, which eventually was nicknamed the Plumbers, because one of their first jobs was to find who was leaking information about the Vietnam War to the New York Times, and so they were to plug the leaks. But yeah, there was definitely a strong CIA presence during the Watergate burglaries, and it's hard to say if that was. Certainly when McCord went back and retaped the latch on the door, that should never have been done, because once it was shown that the tape had been pulled off and that their entering of the place had been discovered, it should never have been retaped, and they should have aborted the operation at that moment, and who knows, history may have been changed at that time.
Oh, okay.
But they didn't.
But now you're saying that Helms, through McCord, through Colson, inserted these guys like Sturgis and Hunt, right? Now, Nixon had to be savvy enough to know that, hey, these are the guys that around JFK hit,
Well, as a matter of fact, prior to my father and Colson talking about working for the White House in this special investigations unit, Nixon had mentioned the name Howard Hunt, and you can hear this on one of the tapes where they're talking about bombing the Brookings Institute, and then Nixon is just sort of ranting, Hunt's the man to get for that job. Now this was 3 months before the official request for Howard Hunt to join the White House team was made. And during this 3-month period, my father went down to Miami to engage his old Cuban comrades to join a possible unit that worked for President Nixon. And my dad stressed the fact that this may lead to a reassessment of our policy with Cuba, and eventually a possible reinvasion of Cuba. And so Bernard Barker and Sturgis and Virgilio Martinez and the other few guys, jumped on board. Anything to... my father had a very good reputation with the Cubans. He was Eduardo.
Right.
That was his war name, and he was, he was there in the training camps, with our teammate, training the Brigade 2506. These were his deepest comrades, the people that he counted as his faithful, not only his faithful followers, but brothers in arms for a mutual cause, and that was to kill Castro and get back into Cuba. So it wasn't hard for him to recruit them back into the fold. But yeah, he was He was in CIA at that time, and of course he had stated under oath that he had never met Frank Sturgis, for example, until Watergate, when that's absolutely false. He and Frank worked together doing airplane pamphlet dropping from airplanes over Cuba during the run-up to the Bay of Pigs. So he knew Frank from way back then, and of course Bernard Barker was, one of Castro's secret police chiefs, and was my father's right-hand man during the whole Bay of Pigs thing. So these guys had a history with my dad, and so that's how that worked out.
How about Liddy? How did he fit into all this?
Well, Liddy and my father were introduced by Colson, and Magruder, I believe, brought Liddy into it. Liddy was ex-Treasury Department, and had his claim to fame was that he had headed an operation that busted Tim Leary. He had been chasing Tim Leary around for a while, and my father and Liddy became very fast friends. He was over at our house many, many times alone, and also with his wife Francine and their children. But my father admired Gordon as someone who stood by his own principles, regardless of popular conception or regardless of what anybody else thought. And of course, Liddy's been portrayed as being a rather overzealous kook who would hold his hand over a flame to show just how strong his will was. And of course, that is a true story. And he also said that he was ready and able to kill anybody that the White House directed him to, including my father, and also to stand on the street corner for himself to be killed by members of the White House or Nixon's camp if they thought the need was so great that Liddy had to be executed. He was willing to stand on a corner and wait for the bullet to come. So that is kind of kooky, but in that kind of business, you need men with a strong sense of purpose, however diluted or perverse it may be. That's just the way they work.
But Liddy would come over to the house for dinner, and I suppose he didn't eat rat like he did in prison, but he would come over to the house for dinner, and you would socialize with his kids?
Yeah. When the few times that he brought his children over, we would watch television together or whatever. But Liddy and my father, as well as when the Cubans came over, Artime or Barker, Sturgis, and those people, they would, we would all have a big family type dinner, and then the men would all go downstairs to my father's private office for hours. And at the time, they were obviously discussing the various Watergate-related black bag jobs that they had going on or that they were about to do. So a lot of those things got hatched at our home in Potomac, and of course I didn't know it at the time at all until later. But I knew that my mother and my father had been arguing, which they never did, and in many confidential discussions with my mother, she let it be known that she had been advising my father to get out of this whole Nixon thing. And my father was just, pleased as pie that he was in the White House and that this is going to be his big chance to reinstate himself as a big player in this kind of political underworld field. Because of his failure in the Bay of Pigs, or the failure of the Bay of Pigs, he was, he never quite got over that, and he looked at this chance to work for Nixon as a chance to redeem himself in the eyes of the big players, and perhaps be rewarded with a higher position in CIA or a higher position in Nixon's White House. Of course, it all went to hell.
And when you think about it, he already made his mark in history. Just amazing, because he was part of the assassination of Che Guevara and Lumumba, right?
Yes, the Che Guevara thing. He was Felix Rodriguez was one of his guys, and he was Felix was there at the camp there where they finally tracked Che down, Felix was happy to put the bullet in his head, but he made a phone call to someone who I assume have been my father, and was told that no, you better let the local police put the bullet in his head, and just so we can distance ourselves directly from that assassination. But yeah, he was he was involved in so many things, starting with the overthrow of the Guatemala regime. And even prior to that, he worked a little bit on the overthrow of the in Iran that brought the Shah of Iran into power. Then there was the Guatemala job, which was very successful. He opened up the first Mexico station of the C.I.A. in Mexico. That was a big feather in his cap. And then he was put on as one of the top designers of the Bay of Pigs invasion, who he worked with. Putting the provisional government together that would run Cuba after the successful operation. He was in charge of many mafia-related assassination attempts against Castro, none of which were successful, of course. But, he knew John Rosselli and worked closely with him on those operations. And continued those operations long after Robert Kennedy, thought he had put a stop to those.
Did guys like Rosselli and them ever come to the house?
Pardon me?
Guys like Johnny Rosselli, did they ever come to the house?
No, not to my knowledge. Anyways, that would have been quite interesting. But yeah.
Now, did you stay in touch?
Quite a guy,
Yeah. Did you stay in touch with any of these, the kids and stuff like that, or family, friends? Did you stay in touch with any of these people?
Well, actually, when my father passed away, I came down here to Florida and attended his services in Miami, and was greeted with much love and embraces by Felix Rodriguez and Bernard Barker, and that. The remnants of the old Cuban crowd, the Brigade 2506, and was really shown a tremendous amount of love for my father through me, and was really treated warmly and given many hugs and kisses from the Brigade members and Felix and people like that. So there was a great deal of respect shown to me, of which I was very, very appreciative of.
And I can imagine you walked away there thinking, if I ever have a problem, I know who to call.
Exactly. I know some Cubans.
Oh, my God, you know the best in the world.
Yeah.
You walk away from there with no fear, forget it.
Don't mess with me.
I can imagine. But now, because we're coming up to a really hard break at the hour, we got to take a long 5-minute break. But now, what about, though, since you've come out in the public, now this is the kind of situation where a friend of the family would call you up and say, hey, man, you're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to talk like this. I'm not threatening you, but this, you're making a problem here. Has that happened?
No, nobody except my father's attorney and my immediate family members, my stepmom and her two children that she had with my dad after my years later after my mother passed away. They're the only ones that have verbally said that I shouldn't be embarking on this path. And of course, the punishment was a life of not having a family anymore. And I loved my stepmother very, very much. I thought she was a fine woman. Very naive to be married to E. Howard Hunt, but he, as he told me a few times, that part of his life was over, and as a condition to their marriage, he had told her that he was not involved in any way in the death of JFK or in the assassination of anybody, that he'd never been involved with the mafia and things, and she just believed him, hook, line, and sinker.
Gotcha.
And so there was a lot at stake when my dad and I were talking about JFK and Watergate. There was a lot at stake, and he ended up, and I don't blame him, but he ended up folding, not having the strength to work with me on it.
Gotcha. We have to take a break now. We're with St. John Hunt, the son of E. Howard Hunt. He's the author of The Bond Secrecy. We'll be right back after this message. And now a word from our sponsors. We are listener-sponsored, and we appreciate your donations. If you like the show, please visit OppermanReport.com and click on the donate button. Or you can donate directly through PayPal at OppermanReport@gmail.com. We have Mike Ray of InfinityHomePlans.com. He's the host of Parlay over at CJ Mars Radio, Thursday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you need custom home designs, stock plans, or 3D work, he's your one-stop shop for home design and drafting needs. Mike Gray at InfinityHomePlans.com. At InfinityHomePlans.com. If you're looking for essential oils, stop by and check out Essentially Tammy on Facebook. She is Young Living Essential Oils Independent Distributor. Now, these are 100% therapeutic grade oils. They help support the body's natural functions. You can visit her website posted on Essentially Tammy to see the current deals, or email at JockoTammy, JOCATAMI at yahoo.com, or call 352-239-8546. 352-239-8546. Hey, if you need a private investigator, go to my website, emailrevealer.com. We offer asset searches, locates, skip tracing, adoption investigations, online infidelity investigations. We can recover deleted text messages from a cell phone or trace an email to online dating websites to catch people cheating. That's emailrevealer.com, or you can call 800-572-9762. 800-572-9762 for emailrevealer.com, my PI website. Pacific West Bamboo. It's your premier source for construction and craft-grade bamboo poles. They're announcing their latest project with EcoHead Event Sanitation, making bamboo composting bathrooms and porta-potties. Their first display will be at the Lucidity Festival in Santa Ynez, California, April 11th to the 13th. Come by and say hi and see what you can build with bamboo. Contact them for any kind of event planning, display building. If you need construction-grade or craft-grade bamboo products, call Amanda at 503-839-8126, 503-839-8126, or visit PacificWestBamboo.com, their brand new website. We're also sponsored by the New World Mexican Women. This is a rural Mexican craft women's cooperative. They are traditional makers of fine handcrafted, authentic jewelry. They use beautiful stone mosaics and Pacific blue Abilene inlay. They have a wonderful book of love letters written to their men in the United States, begging them to return to their families in Mexico. But they've written a new book, and it's it's about a young girl that falls in love with a rodeo bull rider and runs off with him without telling her family. It's a beautiful love story called Azucena Part 1, Azucena to the Rodeo. You can find their books and jewelry by clicking on their banner ad at OppermanReport.com or by Googling New World Mexican Women. You can also promote your business or website right here and have your ad played all over the world 7 days a week by emailing OppermanReport@gmail.com or calling 800-572-9762. Welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. Don't forget, the show is brought to you by Audible.com. You go to audibletrial.com/Opperman Report. You sign up for free, get a free audiobook. Get a whole bunch of free audiobooks, all you want for a whole month. We're here with St. John Hunt. He's the son of E. Howard Hunt. E. Howard Hunt is the Watergate, is the CIA agent. This guy was involved with the murder of Che Guevara. He was involved with the several overthrows, the Bay of Pigs. He got arrested at the Watergate break-in. And then later on, he turns out he confesses. He was suspected a long time of being one of the JFK assassins, but he confessed on his deathbed. He made a videotape, a statement to his son, St. John Hunt, who's the author of Bond of Secrecy, and there's a link to that on the Opperman Report blog. Okay, Mr. Hunt. So now,
yes,
I guess we're getting to the point where Watergate kind of blows over. Things are quiet in your life, right? Would you say your life ever got quiet with your dad?
Yeah, you know, I made it a point to visit him every year, or sometimes every couple of years at his various homes. When he moved, after he got out of prison, he married Laura Martin, and they moved to Guadalajara, Mexico, and I went down and stayed with them for a month or so. And there's an interesting anecdote I can tell you about his my experience with my father in Guadalajara. Well, there was he had a nice big house in a neighborhood, and across the street was another large house. And up on the roof of this place, across the street, was this cage in which the owner of the house was keeping some chickens, roosters, and things. And every morning at about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, this rooster would crow. And he crowed very, very loudly. And my father just wasn't happy about this at all. So after much thinking about the whole thing, he concocted a little escapade of his own to have the rooster liquidated. And what he did was he froze some chicken feed with some poison, some rat poison, and formed it into a little ball. And then with water, he froze it, and then he used a slingshot to sling it over into the cage where the rooster was. And lo and behold, as the sun came up, the ice melted, and the rooster took the bait. Never to be heard of since.
And I bet they arrested some poor sap and he got shot the next day, right?
I don't know. So I think his C.I.A. mind was still pretty sharp in the years after Watergate. But now I've lost the thread of what you asked me. But
that's pretty much what I was asking you. You know, what happened after that? What did he do after that? I guess, and then he was writing all these books. He said he wrote 80 books, right? Yeah,
he wrote over 80 books that were published, probably 2 a year, until his death, which he was working on a book with me called American Spy. And we finished it up after he passed away, although I was no longer part of that project after he died. The lawyers just came in and it shut everything down. And another book, another autobiography of false truths and rewriting history. Came about. That book is absolutely worthless as a book can get. That tells its readers that this is the truth, and when in fact it's not at all. So I was very disappointed and upset that ended up like that. But published many books. So he was a full-time writer after that, and I think he did a few lectures, but he wasn't really big on the lecture circuit. He didn't really like to travel around too much. He wanted to be home with his new wife and his new children and be there for them. And I got to hand it to him. You know, he completely turned his life around. When I was growing up with him and my brothers and sisters, he just wasn't there. He was involved in all these, nationally and internationally important historical situations, countries being overthrown, assassination attempts, both successful and unsuccessful on foreign leaders, and all kinds of stuff like that. So he had a second chance to reinvent himself as a stay-at-home writer and a stay-at-home dad while his wife worked, and that's what he did, and he did it well. And his children are his second family shows that they benefited greatly from having my father, the new E. Howard Hunt, around as a full-time dad, and that was a wonderful thing for him to do.
Now, what did your dad make of when he saw G. Gordon Liddy running around doing those speeches with Timothy Leary and doing those lecture tours? Did he ever have a comment about that?
Yeah, he did. He and Gordon broke ties when Gordon's book Will came out, and he said that in the book Will there was several references about my father, about him that were untrue and or exaggerated, and he never stayed friends with Gordon after he got out of prison and after Gordon got out of prison. They both served really long, the longest sentences of any of the Watergate defendants, my father and G. Gordon Liddy. They'd had a very close relationship for a very short period of time, and then when Watergate broke and they ended up serving their time, there was a bad taste in their mouths, and they blamed each other for different things. Howard, if you hadn't have done this, or my father would say, well, Gordon, if this hadn't happened, if you hadn't pushed for the completion of the mission, then we'd all be fine, or whatever. But they never remained friends after that. It was a bitter time for them.
But it's kind of funny because now Leary, Timothy Leary, who was the electric circuit partner with his former cop that busted him, Liddy, what the hell is going on there with that? But he kind of fits into the motivation for some of the JFK assassins as well, right? Wasn't McCord, was it? Whose wife was having an affair with JFK?
No, actually, it was not McCord's wife. Another gentleman with the name starting with M. It was Cord Meyer.
Cord Meyer
Cord Meyer was a top CIA intelligence official who was stationed in Rome and in England prior to that, and then he became involved in Italy. But Cord's wife, Mary Meyer, was a Georgetown socialite and somewhat of an artiste on the local cocktail circuit of the diplomats and foreign get-togethers at embassies and whatnot. She became JFK's mistress for a long time, steady mistress. They not only spent stolen hours and nights together having sex, but they also experimented in marijuana and LSD. And JFK confided in her. She kept a notebook. in her, which she hid in her library in a false compartment in her library at her home in Georgetown. And she divorced Cord during the time that she was JFK's mistress, because Cord was, Mary Meyer in her development, her psychological development through marijuana and LSD, no longer was impressed with Cord's service in the CIA and looked at Cord as being an evil type of person, as she did the CIA. But they were divorced, and Cord then had a personal vendetta against JFK, and that's why that he was in on the very beginnings of a plot to have JFK removed, which eventually my dad was included in on, and JFK was just not liked by the CIA at all. Nobody liked him. But yeah, Mary Meyer is the lady that you're referring to, not McCord's wife, but Cord Meyer's wife. She was murdered eventually, right after the assassination, as a matter of fact, within less than a year, I believe, supposedly by an individual who mugged her as she was jogging or walking her dog on the Georgetown towpath alongside the canal. But that whole investigation and the whole apprehension of this one gentleman was viewed very, very suspiciously, and as it turned out, my father told me that the same night she had been murdered, James Angleton, who was the CIA's chief of counterintelligence, in other words, he would try to determine whether an agent who had come from the KGB to the CIA
was in fact a real agent or a double agent, and he was Angleton was known to be a very spooky individual. Friends with my father, of course, on a professional level, but Angleton and two CIA guys broke into Mary Myers' apartment the night she was murdered, and located her diary with her time with JFK, and the diary was given, I believe, by Angleton to the gal that was running Life magazine, Margaret
Mead.
I can't remember her name.
Margaret Mead?
Yeah, yes, yeah. Right. And then the diary just disappeared. But my father was always a little upset at the fact that Angleton could go breaking in people's houses and get a pass on it, and then of course he wasn't allowed that privilege. But really, the two have nothing to do with each other. I mean, they're not in the same league. I mean, he's breaking into embassies and the Watergate DNC, and Angleton breaks into Mary Myers' apartment. So that was always a little kind of thorn in his side.
But it is interesting to me that these such high-level people, like a guy meeting directly with Helms, would be doing a burglary, and guys like Sturgis, these hitmen, would be doing these little burglaries and wiretapping.
Yeah, that is really curious. Well, I know that the reason the reason Nixon wanted my father, because my father had a very, very strong reputation as being a guy that, one foot was on the front lines in the trenches, and the other foot was in the Oval Office or in the office of Dick Helms. He'd have lunch with Dick Helms in the afternoon, and by the evening he was dressed in his khakis, and he was training Cuban exiles. My dad was a kind of an all-hands type of guy, right. A guy that had a very serious reputation as being someone that would commit a killing, or certainly have it done by the best of people. And that's where you have the need for him to be hands-on at the Watergate burglary. I mean, he didn't actually break in himself to the Watergate. He was stationed across the street, right. Monitoring the progress of the break-in team. So he was removed once from that from that immediate situation. But the Cubans were there for my dad. If he said, go do this, especially Sturgis, if he's told Frank to go kill that guy and point a finger at a gentleman, Frank would go do it. Any one of them would have. That's how much they respected and thought of my dad. And so that's why he needed to be there, not at the actual break-in, but monitoring it, part of the team, supervising it, as was his job, I believe, in the JFK assassination. He wasn't a shooter, he wasn't a tramp, but he was there monitoring the situation in case anything needed to be dealt with. My father had the answers, to deal with whatever could have or would have happened during the hit on Kennedy. So he was, that's why he was there, even though he was high up. And of course, he had publicly retired from CIA, so there was no direct link. The CIA, when asked, they said, well, no, he retired, 6 months ago. He works for a private firm. We don't know what Howard's been doing, which was a complete, lie. He reported directly to Helms, giving the goods on what Nixon was up to directly to the CIA.
Well, let me.
It's all about information is power, and Helms wanted someone on the inside, deep cover, to give him the goods on what Nixon was up to.
So, but now all along, you're seeing this Spotlight magazine article, and your dad's denying everything. How does it come about that he starts saying to you, "Hey, I got to talk to you about something"?
Well, here we are. We're like 2002, and I had already read a few things, and of course, for years had known that if I was the alibi, then the alibi wasn't true, right. because he wasn't at home. And so no amount of him saying, you remember, son, that I was with you that afternoon. We sat and watched television and blah, blah, blah. That wasn't true. So I knew that there was more to be told. And the tramp photograph did look a lot like my father's. So I did feel that there was something that wasn't being addressed. And I thought if I can get my dad to really come clean in the last times of his life, because 2002, he was fairly sick, although he did last, a few more years. His mind was very sharp, very strong, but his body just, piece by piece, was just giving away. His leg was amputated, and he wasn't gonna have that amputation until I came down and begged him to stay alive as the patriarch of the Hunt family, that we needed him and we loved him and we valued him, and he had been through a lot worse things than that, and come out on the other side, and please, don't let gangrene kill you. You've got a lot left to offer the world. And he went through with the operation and stayed alive. But I got him interested in. I had heard that on the set of the Nixon movie, Oliver Stone had flown my father up to the set to act as technical advisor. And one evening over a dinner with the cast and crew, or the cast, basically Oliver Stone and Anthony Hopkins and my father and a few other people, Oliver Stone just sort of blurted out, Howard, what would it take to get you to tell everything you know about the JFK assassination? My dad put his silverware down and thought for a moment, and he goes, about $5 million. In total dead seriousness.
Sure.
And Oliver just looked at him and what, really? And my father said, yeah, I figure it's worth about $5 million, considering all the hell I'll have to go through and put my family through if that ever happened. And I had heard that story from my brother, who was there. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and so that put the seed into my brain. I thought, well, maybe I can broker a deal between my father and interested parties. And then I found out that a friend of my father's named David Gianmarco, a Canadian journalist and TV host, had written a coffee table picture book about James Bond, in which my father wrote the preface or the foreword to, and they were friends. And Gianmarco had been trying to get my dad to talk about JFK. Of course, he wouldn't. But one of Gianmarco's best friends happened to be Kevin Costner. Gianmarco had assured my father that if my father had information about the JFK assassination, that Kevin Costner would provide the necessary financial part of the deal, and so there was this whole very strange scene that happened when Kevin Costner flew down on a private jet to my father's home in Miami, and when he rings the doorbell, and my father was expecting him, so they were ready for him, but Costner apparently walks into my dad's house, and in the first 5 minutes goes, so tell me, how did you kill JFK? In front of my father's wife, who this was all supposed to be kept from her. And, my father, it was so rude and so unexpected that they basically asked Costner to leave. And that became sort of the genesis of something. I reached out to David Gianmarco and Kevin Costner and said that, look, you guys completely blew this whole thing. You completely handled it wrong. Said, let me see what I can find out from my father. If he's interested in doing a project like this, even after this horrendous scene with Mr. Costner. And I'm on the phone to Kevin Costner a few times, and he's talking to me, and so I arranged a deal where my father was willing to discuss the JFK assassination and his involvement, his prior knowledge of it, with Kevin Costner, who was then going to be the presenter to the world of this part of history. And so we developed this code where we wanted to give Costner and Gianmarco enough information where they knew that this was the real deal and substantial, but at the same time to keep names and dates hidden from them so as not to give too much information. And so my dad developed this code. Anyways, the deal fell through when the contracts came through, and they were only offering my father they wanted him to fly out to Los Angeles and do it on tape, the film, and they were going to give him $100 a day per diem. And I'm on the phone to Costner and going, "Are you kidding me? This is an insult to my father. You're offering him, no down payment on this, which was required, $1 million down payment, and a $5 million check at the end, or $4 million check at the end, a total of $5 million. And you want my father, who's 80 plus years old, he's sick, to fly? I mean, the freaking flight could probably kill him.
Or
this is absolutely intolerable." And Kevin Costner just said, "Well, then we're not going to do it. I'm not going to put $1 million down on something I don't know. I want your father to tell me everything he knows first." And I go, "Well, that's just not going to happen, Mr. Costner. I'm very sorry, but the contract stipulates that that we're given the $1 million, and we've already given you enough information." He goes, "Yeah, but that information he doesn't have any of the names and the dates. How do I know it's real?" And I go, this has got to be on the level of trust. And the conversation ended badly, and so that was the end of that.
That's interesting because Costner is a bizarre character to begin with. Like that whole thing about when the oil spill happened in the Gulf, and he had some inventors with a machine that could clean the oil, and he's testifying before Congress. Like, what is this guy running around doing? The guy's getting involved in everything.
Costner's not satisfied with being, a world-acclaimed actor and movie producer and director. He wants to be someone that brings something, significant historically and politically, or scientifically to the world. And so, if it wasn't the JFK assassination, then it's going to be the oil spill, Yeah. But it was strange talking to him because he kept saying to me, he goes, you're talking to Kevin Costner, And I go,
"Oh, really?
Mr. Costner, I know who I'm speaking with. I'm speaking with Kevin Costner." He goes, "You're not going to just screw me for a bunch of money and squeeze this out for your own benefit." I mean, he was kind of rude and kind of brusque. It's like, he was Kevin Costner and he was going to call all the shots and it was going to be done his way or no way. And then I'm like, "Well, I appreciate you taking your time, sir. I love your films. But this is just not going to happen the way that you're saying it. You got to come halfway. You got to meet my dad halfway. And as a matter of fact, my dad is not going to be flying to Los Angeles or any other damn place. You're going to bring the film crew to him if and when he says it's all right to do that. My father is the one calling the moves here, and I'm sorry, but you're not." So, it was a click, goodbye, click, click type thing, But
and the next day,
yeah, he was kind of a weird guy, I guess.
The next day, 6 Cubans got on a plane, went to Costner's house.
yeah, that's right. He woke up with a severed bull's head in his bed,
or a chicken's head in his bed.
Yeah, a chicken's head in his brain. Yeah, the mysterious disappearance of the Guadalajara chicken.
Oh my God. But now, I guess this is where the tension began with you and the other side of the family. Is that what started things going south with that? Yeah.
That's when it started because my dad had made all these promises to his wife, that no, he didn't know about this and he wasn't involved in that, and he kept, it was very difficult for him. They had a year or two prior to this, they had just gone through a really rough period where it had been found out by her that my father had been unfaithful, and she left. She was gone, and my father came out to California, and he was just brokenhearted, and he enlisted my help to try to win his wife Laura back, and I helped him with that, and she did come back. They went to various therapies together and priests, for advice and counsel and things, and I don't believe my dad was ever unfaithful after that, although in his whole lifetime, I don't think he was ever faithful to my mother or to his second wife until this happened, when Laura actually left. And she was gone, the better part of a year. And, she was 20, 30 years younger than my dad. So, this was someone that was going to be with him in his old age, and she did stick with him.
So your dad was unfaithful when he was around 80 years old?
No, he was unfaithful in his late 70s, I would say.
And this is at a time when he had one leg, when they already amputated his leg?
No, he was not unfaithful at that point. At that point, she had already come back. This was in the late 80s when this kind of came up in the family, and she left. He was in his 70s at that time. But Laura told me that my dad was quite a guy in the sack, and he was just as strong as he ever was in his youth, and when they first met in the mid 70s.
Oh, God bless him for that. Yeah. So
he was a virile man, and but he'd always used women, and he was a misogynist at best. And my mother had caught him with being unfaithful, and she threatened to leave. As a matter of fact, she was planning to divorce him when she came back from Europe. But then this whole Watergate thing erupted, and she stood by her husband. I mean, not only stood by him, but did everything she could to help him, even though she had already made plans to leave. And she told me so. And it's to her great credit as a woman that she saw the necessity of helping this man that had been so deceitful to her, and conducting affairs on the side for years, their whole life together. He was unfaithful.
Did you ever say to Oliver Stone, "Hey man, you did this movie Nixon? How come you didn't mention the murder of my mother?"
No, but that's a pretty good question. I think the whole Watergate plane crash thing is not really. It's not known by a lot of people. I mean, it really isn't, and it's probably the deepest and darkest secret of the Watergate secrets that have come out. There was there was other people on that plane that needed to be killed. Michelle Clark, she was on that plane. She was a CBS News reporter, and she had agreed to work on a story about Watergate with my mother. So they were flying to Chicago together to start an interview, an investigative journalistic approach by Michelle Clark. Also, there was people on board that flight that were connected to Attorney General John Mitchell for in a natural gas investigation. Mitchell was under investigation for corruptly helping the El Paso Natural Gas Company against its main competitor, the Northern Natural Gas Company. Mitchell's decision to drop antitrust charges was worth an estimated $300 million to El Paso Gas. And Ralph Blodgett and a guy named James W. Kruger, two attorneys working for Northern Natural Gas Company in the investigation of Mitchell, were both killed in that crash. So there was a few things going on that flight. And my mother, had expressed many times to me that she knew she was being followed. She was afraid for her life. Her responsibility as a Watergate paymistress, collecting money from lockers at Greyhound Station and at airports in and around D.C. In the wee hours, waiting by phone booths in the deserted and dilapidated areas for phone calls from Nixon people to guide her to a drop-off or a pickup place for money. And then she would collect the money, and then in the next week or so, she would disperse it to the Cubans and to Liddy and McCord. And she was on her way to Chicago. She was on her way there to pay off a guy that built some of the hand-built some of the custom wire transmission stuff that was used in Watergate, because during one of the earlier break-ins, they were very disappointed at the stuff they'd gotten through the CIA and through the White House for surveillance and bugging.
Do you know the name of that guy?
Yeah, what's that?
Do you know the name of the bug manufacturer?
Yeah, let's see. I have it here.
Ernie Rizzo? Nah.
Let's see. And looking at my book right now.
Because you're actually writing a book on the murder of your mother as well. In fact, the book is complete. You sent me a copy of it.
Yeah, the book is complete. It's in the editing phase right now, and it'll be out in the fall. Let's see. The guy's name. If I find it, I'll
don't worry about it.
I'll cut it into the conversation.
Yeah.
He was a Chicago guy that hand built that kind of equipment.
Not Ernie Rizzo.
Yeah.
Not Ernie Rizzo, right?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
That name doesn't ring a bell.
Okay.
Stevens, his name looks like it is. Michael Stevens, proprietor of Chicago-based Stevens Research Laboratories, who sold McCord debugging devices he was arrested with at the Watergate Hotel. And as a matter of fact, Stevens informed the FBI that Dorothy Hunt was traveling to see him to ensure his silence with a cash payment. And just after the crash, he was in fear for his own life. He notified the FBI of threats made to him by persons unknown who claimed that Dorothy Hunt's death was a homicide, and that he would be next in line if he ever talked about it. And so he officially reported these threats to the FBI, and that Dorothy Hunt was murdered, and that he was in fear of his own life. His name was Michael Stevens of Stevens Research Laboratories, or whatever.
It's interesting to see how deep the payments were going. All the way down to the guy manufacturing the bugs.
Yeah, I mean, there was a tremendous amount of money. When I went down, when my dad asked me a day after Watergate broke in the papers to meet him down at a bank in Georgetown, there was at least $250,000 in that envelope that I stuffed in the back part of my pants, and then put my blazer, my suit jacket over it, and drove home with that. My dad said, "Look, you may or may not be followed by persons, possibly FBI, but try to keep an eye on your rearview mirror, and if you notice a vehicle, that's been behind you for a substantial amount of time, 6 blocks, 10 blocks, when you're leaving D.C. To come back out to our house, just make some turns, try to get rid of them, and I'm like, whoa, this is like really intense here, and I was nervous and afraid, but made it home, and I hid the envelope in a prearranged location in our basement for my dad. And then my mother and I opened it up when she came back from Europe, and there was just a tremendous amount of money in there. She gave me $5,000, and she said, "Buy a van and get out of town. Go." And I'm like, "Go? Where am I going to go?" And she's like, "Take a trip around the country. Just take a drive. Go with your girlfriend. Go." So I did. I bought a van, a Dodge van, and my girlfriend and I went on a tour around the country. Took the northern way out and the southern route back. And there's a chapter in the book Dorothy that's going to be coming out called "Hippie with a Shotgun." That's me.
Oh, that's great, man. Because you slept in the van, I guess, right?
Yeah, we slept in the van. We did all the national parks and all that stuff. But in Texas, we ran into some trouble on the road. Being long hairs and having feathers dangling in the van that could be seen, and almost ran off the road. But I did have my mother's 20 gauge shotgun in the van with us, and as this redneck truck pulled alongside of us after almost pushing us off the road, goddamn hippies that we were. My girlfriend handed me the shotgun, and she's scared, and I cocked that thing and levied it right at their window, and boy, did that cause them to back the heck off on that one, and that's why I call that little chapter "Hippie with a Shotgun."
If only the guy had known, hey, your dad was killing commies, you know? He was on the same
I
side.
I know. I mean, which I should have hung a sign out my window. You know, my dad's a dangerous person. Don't mess with me. I know Cubans.
Yeah, there you go. So listen, we got 20 minutes left and then we're going to drop 2 stations. But we go another hour if you want to take some phone calls. But we got 20 minutes left, so it's up to you if you want to stay longer and take some calls. You know, all the calls we'll get will be people want to, how many assassins were on the head of a pin. But let's do it. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah.
Now, we got 20 minutes,
That's fine.
And we're going to drop 2 stations. We're going to be on a whole bunch of stations all over Europe and Spreaker and iHeart and everything like that, YouTube. So give us an idea of what your dad told you, what went down in the JFK assassination.
Okay, well, when it came down to actual substance of what's called the last confession or the last testament, he outlined the scenario that is in the book, and that scenario is that in the summer of 1960, early summer, April, May of '63, he was approached by trustworthy persons, by David. What was his name?
David Ferry? No.
No. Let's see. David. He was a Latino. Oh, let's see. It's right here. Morales. David Morales, a guy that my father worked a lot with. At the Miami station, C.I.A. station in Florida, there, approached by David Morales, and that Morales explained to my father that he had been picked by Bill Harvey, who was a very colorful, I'll say, CIA operative high up in the agency, and had run afoul of Bobby Kennedy many, many times. As a matter of fact, when Jack Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy both put the kibosh on any activities involving gun running or any kind of activity against Cuba during the Cuban Missile Crisis, Bill Harvey just ignored it completely and was sending boats to sabotage Cuban radio stations and have planes dropping diseased bugs and things on the Cuban crops and dropping counterfeit currency on the cities in Cuba. And Bobby Kennedy found out and was just enraged and basically fired Bill Harvey from his position in CIA and sent him to Rome, where he was supposed to be far away from the Cuban situation, and he should have stopped then, but Bill didn't. He kept on. He was a real loyalist to the Cubans as well. But my father viewed Bill Harvey as a gun-toting, because he wore his guns on his hips like a Western guy,
right.
A gun-toting psycho, an alcoholic. He was a hard-drinking man and prone to outbursts of whose of whose limits we don't really know yet. But anyways, Bill Harvey was, according to Morales, to my dad, was behind this operation to remove someone high up in the government that was perceived as a threat. So my father went to a meeting at a safe house in and around Miami, and found out during the meeting that there was a motivation going on within the CIA and accepted and fostered by some members in the White House, notably LBJ and Cord Meyer, and also had the support of J. Edgar Hoover for the removal of Kennedy from office. And there was another meeting in a safe house where this was discussed in a little bit further terms. Sturgis was at that meeting. David Morales was at that meeting. It was told to my father that there was that one of his close friends, another recruit another man my father recruited, was David Atlee Phillips. He was handling a couple of guys, one of which who was Oswald as the guy that was going to take the dub for the assassination. They had a lot of things worked out already, potentially worked out, and my father, at that point, the things that he told me. I mean, he named Morales, David Alley Phillips, Bill Harvey, Frank Sturgis, Cord Meyer, who was personal friends with Lyndon Johnson. That's why Lyndon went to Cord, who then went to William Harvey. These were all Kennedy haters, and so it was not hard to find these guys. David Phillips as well. So when it came time to for my dad to find out further details after the second meeting, he goes, well, what is it that you really need me for? And they said, well, Howard, you're someone whose reputation is solid with the Cuban community, and we know that you're someone that can be relied upon to oversee an operation in a kind of a general sense, and we just want your kind of approval, your blessing on this project. And my father, one of the things he said was, well, if Bill Harvey is involved in this, he goes, you can forget about me getting into this in a serious way, because that guy is a drunk psycho. And so that was one of the last meetings. At the last meeting they had, he did not feel confident that anything that Bill Harvey was a big part of was going to work out. And actually, the location of the assassination during these talks at the Safe House in the early summer of '63 was not determined, but it certainly was not Dallas at the time. It was more like Kennedy was coming to some places in Florida, so they were looking at Tampa or Miami, if he was going to be coming to Miami. I don't know if he was or not, but certainly it was a Florida plot. And as we now know, there were several plots, several groups, teams, or what have you, involved in killing Kennedy. There was a team that was discovered by the Secret Service, I think, in Chicago. There was also a hit team in Tampa, actually, but it was the Dallas faction that came through with the hit, and of course, CIA contract agent Frank Sturgis and his partner Marita Lorenz, who was Castro's mistress and had been recruited by the CIA to assassinate Castro by various poisons. She testified in court that she met my father when he knocked on a motel door in Dallas and handed Frank Sturgis an envelope and some papers with some hand-drawn maps. And he was introduced to Marita Lorenz as Eduardo. And she didn't know Eduardo from anybody else, but when my father's picture appeared in the paper related to Watergate, her jaw dropped, and she was like, "That's the guy that came to the motel that handed Frank the envelope of money and the maps." So, that's basically it. I know that if my father hadn't been so pressured by the other family faction, that there was a lot more to tell.
Oh, really?
But what he gave me was what it was what it was, and he said that I would have to wait till his death to bring this information out, and he sent me a cassette, not a pre-planned thing, but he sent me a cassette in the mail to my home in California, and I packaged for my dad, opened it up, a cassette, nothing else written on it, put it in the cassette player, and there he is, his voice, big as life, outlining the exact things I've just told you. And he at the end he goes, and I've made this information available to you, my son, and to you alone. For keeping for me until such time as either I express to you to work with me in releasing it, or until my death. And that was the famous deathbed confession tape.
Now, is there anything more to these tapes that you haven't played?
I haven't heard the complete tape for such a long time. There wasn't really much more that I can recall now, and all that stuff I have in storage in California, and I'm out here in Florida, so I've been trying to figure out a way to get back there and and do something with all this stuff I have in storage. Some of which pertains to my father, letters and things like that, and the very original tapes, of which I just I posted the meat of it on my website, stjohnhunt.com, and it's available for anyone to click and hear it at no charge for free, because my initial desire, and still my desire, is to get people to hear this, because there has never been someone of my father's stature that admitted to he called himself a bench warmer, but that's a very carefully placed term. Someone who's involved but not quite active, and that's basically a good way to describe him. He was asked to be there to give an overall support to the tactical end of the mission, and he was there. I do firmly believe, because my mother said he was in Dallas, and my father couldn't come up with an alibi for a 12-15 hour period. I've spoken with the pilot who flew him into Dallas, and the complete extent of his involvement may never come out. I know that Tosh Plumley, who's the pilot that flew my dad, him and my dad were very good friends, and it's interesting because I met Tosh last November in Dallas when I went to do a lecture there at the JFK conference, and he said, "Yeah, I've been waiting a long time to meet you, St. John." And I said, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah, last time I talked to your father, he told me, stay in the dark. And I have stayed in the dark for all these years, and when you came out with your book, I knew I had to see you, because if you tell me to come into the light, I will come into the light." And I said, well, so we had a long discussion about my father and JFK and all these things in his hotel suite at the time. And at the end of it, I said, well, Tosh, you should come in the light and bring this stuff up. So Tosh is working on a book, and he's got a lot of great information. Tosh Plumley, he's a guy that is still alive, that was involved with Barry Seal, and he was a pilot with Barry, good best friends with Barry, and the whole Mena, Arkansas thing with Clinton and Bush. This guy's got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah,
but he's a real guy.
We've had Daniel Hopsicker on the show. As a matter of fact, he did. He was on my show for the first time in 7 years. He hadn't done an interview in 7 years before. He pretty much gave it up. And this show, by the way, will be played on Gene Chip Tatum's station. Okay, he plays our shows, and he was involved in all that Mena, Arkansas, and Iran-Contra stuff. So I guess it's a small world, right?
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Especially in these intelligence circles, it's like they use some of these same people over and over again, in different things.
But you must have been talking to your dad before that he mailed you the tape. Now, how did that work? You wouldn't talk to him on the phone, right? You had to fly over there and see him in person?
No, I was only able to fly there, for like 2 weeks out of a year. I flew there in 2002, 2003, 2005, and 2007. And when he actually passed away in 2007. But
and then how would it work?
So this was very difficult to keep a strong continuity to what we were engaged in.
Right. But he would pour a glass of scotch and say, "Okay, let's sit down and talk about this." And how would it happen?
Well, at that time, the scotch was no longer on the table. He was in a hospital bed and back in his own room at his house, and at that, in the beginning, 2002 to up to almost 2007, definitely 2003 and 2005. He'd be able to. I'd help him transfer into his wheelchair, and we'd go out for a stroll through the neighborhood at Miami Shores, and we talk about things. And then, if we were given enough privacy, which we were never allowed. I mean, my stepmother always had so either some reason to be there, or she had one of two of her children there to be, I just want to just see how these interviews work. I just want to be around, blah blah blah, and we could never talk about anything. So it was we had to pick our times and steal away moments to get this thing going, and in the very end, he sadly, with tears in his eyes, said he just couldn't go through with it. That he would lose his wife, he would lose the respect of his children, and after what Watergate had done to our family, he said, he said, certainly, Saint, you understand that when these revelations come out, there's going to be a tremendous amount of press, and of course his lawyer was badgering me and saying, your father's going to be arrested for withholding information, for perjuring himself during the church committee's investigation into C.I.A. foreign assassinations, and he perjured himself in another Senate investigation into the Kennedy assassination, the Rockefeller Commission, I think that was. And do I want to send my poor old father to jail, for prison for the rest of his life? And all this stuff is coming down. It's just brutal trying to steer through all of that stuff and feeling horrible about the whole thing. It's like really trying to work in my own brain, like, well, why am I doing this? Certainly for the historical importance of it, but at what cost? Is my father going to be put in prison for withholding information on presidential assassination? Certainly he could. Now, whether he would have or not, I don't know. But there was just a tremendous amount of weight on my shoulders and his shoulders, and it just ended the way it did. And day one, and I waited till he passed away until bringing it out, and I've had to deal with the consequences of losing my family since then. But I'm okay with that.
Do you think the other side of the family has some documents or recordings or something else that could be, or do you think they have their hands over their ears? They don't want to hear anything.
Yeah, it's their hands over their ears. See no, hear no, and say no. They just don't want anything to do with any of it.
How do they make their living? What do these people do for a living?
Well, my stepmom, my dad's second wife, Laura, she's a school teacher in Florida down here. She doesn't even know I'm down. I don't know how to get in touch with them. There's no way I can reach out to them. I reached out to them through my dad's their attorney, right, which was part of that whole Watergate plot to get the kids out of the house and all that stuff. And he texted back to me. He goes, "Well, none of your family still don't want anything to do with you ever. So you can just shrivel up and die, and they won't have a second thought about it." And I thought, that's really cruel. That's really it's been like 7 years now, 8 years since his death, and come on, I don't even get an audience with my stepmother or my half brother and sister to just try to explain the historical importance of what they wanted suppressed. Sorry, that's shame on them.
Well, just because a lawyer says that doesn't mean that they say that. So that's something, we can locate them for you. You could send them a letter, and maybe, I reunite a lot of estranged families, man. So listen, we're down to like the last 2 minutes. And then we're going to be leaving a couple of stations. So what do you want to leave them with? How can people get a hold of you? What's your website, your book? Tell us how to find you.
Well, my website is stjohnhunt.com, spelled out SAINTJOHNHUNT.com. And you can once you click into that website, you can hear my father's deathbed confession that he taped by himself and sent to me from Florida to California. There's a transcript of it, and there's some other things. I've got a couple of DVDs. An interview, the last interview with my father about the Watergate and JFK. Is available on there. They can also just order my book through Amazon, as you said. And I'll be speaking in October in New Orleans at the conference or a celebration of Lee Harvey Oswald's birthday in New Orleans in October, and I'll be introducing some of the speakers at that function. And I'll probably be in Dallas again in November. So if they want to come and meet me and bring a book, if they end up buying one or something, I'll gladly sign it for them. My next book is about my mother, who led a fascinating life as an early OSS operative and the CIA. According to Dick Helms, she was a pay grade above my father, and subject to many secrets, knew many secrets about the CIA and my father, which I go into. I think it's a very fascinating read. It's probably short, 200 pages. But I don't believe in padding a lot of my own life, these events and things that have happened to me, padding it out with a lot of extraneous BS, just to make the book thick and, oh wow, look at all this stuff. I just talk about what I know personally and what I've experienced on a personal level. And it's called Dorothy, and it'll be coming out on Trine Day Press in the early fall of this year. So stay tuned for that. It's got a lot of good stuff about Watergate and the war with the Hunt-Nixon war during the blackmail part of the Watergate scandal.
Okay, you got to promise to come back for that.
On the plane.
You got to promise to come back for that. Okay, we're here with...
you bet.
Thank you. We're here with St. John Hunt, the author of his... What is it? The Bond Secrecy?
Bond of Secrecy.
The Bond
Yes.
of Secrecy. What is that thing exactly? Yeah, The Bond of Secrecy. You can find that link on the OppermanReport.com. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a little break here, and we'll be back. We'll take listener phone calls, 702-605-4894, or you could Skype me at ed.opperman. As long as we can keep John here, we'll do it. Okay, we'll keep him as long as we can. We'll be right back after these messages.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, brother.